Okay, great. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Techbiz this evening. And it's a great pleasure to be back with you this week as we discuss another very interesting topic of Techbiz brought to you from the stables of Eco Innovation Center, an incubation and accelerator center located at 50 Awolowo Road here in Lagos, where we seek to provide the right support and handholding mentorship for startups that seek to scale. We are committed to how to support startups to be able to commercialize their ventures. And this happens to be our 104th episode of Techbiz, and it brings us great joy to be able to bring this to you today. And today again happens to be a day in which we have one of our prolific ecosystem leaders in the house. But hey, I mean, just hold on a bit. I will be talking about her as we move on. For all the other Techbiz webinars, I'm sure you know from time to time, we bring you subject matter experts onto this platform who come to share with us from the well of experience, tips, and information that will help us on the journey of entrepreneurship. And so for the previous 103 episodes of Techbiz, wow, how time flies, 103 previous episodes where we've dealt with all manners of issues, intellectual property protection, business model canvas, how to commercialize your business, how to run term sheets, partnership, investment readiness. We've done through a ton of different topics relevant to the tech ecosystem in the last 103rd episode. And should you want to go back, I mean, just you want to have an experience or just go through any of those sessions, just go to our website and go to the link. My colleagues are dropping the link in the chat box now. Is www.ecoicenter.com/webinar, and you'll find 103 episodes that have been recorded for you to go through and just learn from the world of experience of these subject matter experts that have graced the platform. And should you have questions, clarifications, you think you want to take the conversations forward, or you have areas you have concerns about, feel free to join also a community where we provide on-ground support, sharing information, tips with you that assists you on this journey and on this part. And I think my colleague also will be able to drop that link for you into the WhatsApp group, not just the Telegram. I've seen the Telegram being dropped, but into the WhatsApp group, they will drop the link for you, and then you can also join the WhatsApp group. And then you find myself and so many other ecosystem leaders providing support and providing the right feedback to you should you need to do that. And it's great to have you on the call this evening. Today, we'll be discussing something entirely interesting. And of course, I'll talk to you about Art of Technology Lagos at the end. But today, we will be talking about a topic that's quite germane. Having worked with the ecosystem the last couple of years, I found that sustainability is a key issue. I mean, when you read the topics and the terrain startups go through, nascent businesses, you find out that there's quite a number of fragility in the ecosystem. And therefore, today we're talking about sustainability health checks for tech startups. Tech startups have become the cornerstone of how entrepreneurship is being driven forward and is being accelerated in this part of the world and globally, really creating businesses, solving unemployment, solving socioeconomic issues. And therefore, it remains germane that our tech ecosystem needs to be resilient. But again, I was sharing with colleagues earlier today that when you look at it, it's been from COVID to supply chain issues, COVID in 2020, supply chain issues in 2021. Then Russia decided to invade Ukraine in 2022. And then we're dealing with inflation, devaluations, and all manners of issues in 2020 and political instability in 2023. It's been 4 years of roller coaster. You must have huge resilience built into your business to weather that storm. And we think so many people are going through very difficult times as tech startups, and we're looking for someone who understands this terrain and who is able to be able to share with us knowledge to be able to take us through and tips about to pass through a time like this. I mean, it's no gainsaying. We can't deny the fact that quite a number of startups are experiencing headwinds around this time. We see them in the news on all manners of tech platforms, news platforms, about what the times are like. And if not for anything, I think the devaluation of the currency alone impacts quite a number of startups. And here again, we're looking at next year where physical issues are a big, big concern and a big worry to quite a number of startups. So we think it's pertinent for us to discuss issues around sustainability. And we've searched around and we got a subject matter expert whose profile will tell you about it. And so she leads the legal risk and compliance team of at an international multinational fintech company. And again, when I looked at the profile, I mean, it's someone who has legal background, but again, has vast experience in the fintech and the finance ecosystem. It's a rare combination, and that's who she is today. And I mean, I'm sure all of us will listen to her with rapt attention. And our fintech has operations not only in Nigeria but also in Kenya. They are in Tanzania, they are in Uganda, and of course in India, which means it's a bit more continental. She's advised on both local and international financings, acquisitions, divestments, and structured finance deals across companies in the financial services, technology, manufacturing, and energy sector. And I think we find that quite interesting. Most startups and most organizations with that are well. I mean, she's advised across, and therefore I'm sure she'll be speaking from a broad range of experience across. And what she's done is that she's also driven regulatory and compliance strategies for companies in the financial services technology space, and had advised on new products, business models, and also quite, of course, helping companies and startups navigate skillfully the regulatory landscape. Regulation is a big concern here. She's also committed to the growth of startups and has worked with accelerators and founders while acting as advisors and mentors to some. She's currently the Secretary General of the FinTech Association of Nigeria. FinTech represents between 47 and 52% of total number of startups that we know in this country. And so if she's regulating them, and again, we think that's where we have one of the highest amount of headwinds. Because of where she sits, she has vast experience about what people are going through, how to navigate. It also happens to be one of the most regulated sectors of the whole tech startup ecosystem. And I think regulation actually helps people scale anyway, and they are the most skilled. 4 unicorns, all the unicorns are actually in the fintech space. And here she is currently the Secretary General of the whole association. She's got an MSc in law and finance from the Queen Mary University in London, and has completed executive course on strategy, fintech, innovation management at prestigious institutions such as the Side Business School, University of Oxford, and Harvard Business School. She's recognized in international legal rankings such as IFLR Chambers and Partners for her work in the fintech, banking, and the finance space. Ladies and gentlemen, because we have a bigger subject matter expert in the house, I need to pave the way for Tolulope Omoleye Osidero as she steps in into the platform now and takes us for the next 35-40 minutes through our insights on how we all can remain resilient and be able to grow sustainable businesses in a time like this. Tolulope, you are welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that warm introduction. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tolulope, as you mentioned. Today I'll just be talking us through and interacting with everyone around, sustainability health checks for tech startups. One person and I were talking about this topic. I think one thing that was really key for us was, these are difficult times. There's a lot of uncertainty. You gave the background, the whole works from COVID, supply chain disruption, FX volatility, depreciation, funding winter, both abroad and local, inflation, purchasing power has nosedived. People are sort of sticking to basic, and, a lot of people are really thinking about extras. And, if you were a tech startup, now is just the time to, really think about what you're doing. Should I still be here? If I were we were joking on some WhatsApp group about, I think we should just leave this fintech business and go into commodities or something. And it's a real question for people, just even in terms of, how do you sort of withstand, grow, or even just maintain status quo in these times. And now, 30 minutes or 35 minutes is really short for us to go through this. So what I have done is like an abridged version of what a health check should look like. Let me just share my screen. Just give me a second. This one section. Okay. Yeah, please let me know when you can see my screen.
We see your screen properly.
Right. Okay. So I'm just going to, in 30 minutes, try to provide a guide on what a health check, health check is, why it's important, and how to sort of optimize the process. Because again, I realized that a lot of us are, early stage business. Some of us probably haven't raised or are bootstrapping ourselves. Some of us have raised from family and friends, so a few angel investors here and there. And some may actually even be in the process where they've sort of raised a pre-series or series funding. Regardless of whatever stage it is that you are, I think this is going to be useful for you, just in terms of being able to withstand current times that we're in. So the background, honestly, Victor already gave the background. There's FX volatility, there's funding water. So again, for various reasons, we're not seeing as much investment as we saw in the 2021 when everyone, pre-2020, pre-COVID, slightly after COVID when funds were really looking to deploy. We're not seeing that level of investment, but even from like foreign investors and local investors as well. So you need, that's something to think about, if 4 years ago with an idea, with your deck, with a few phone calls, connections, emails, you would find a few people writing you checks, basically out of just the fact that, Africa's the next big thing, Nigeria is the next big thing, and all of that. But today, it's taking a lot more for you to be able to raise funds. I'm not saying that, people aren't raising funds. I'm just saying that, the current funding winter, and it's taking a bit more for people to raise. There's definitely inflation, and the nosedive in purchasing power for a lot of people, high cost of living, and all of that. And the effect of this is, one, a lot of companies are experiencing reduced revenues. And that's happening to whether you're a startup or you're an established company, you're a growth stage company, you're a mature company. Companies are, experiencing reduction in the revenue. They're seeing cash shortages. And there's also an increased strain on their resources. So if your revenue is reducing, you're trying to innovate, or you're trying to expand, or you're trying to sort of just double down on your operations or whatever it is, there's a strain on that limited resource that you have. And with that background, companies may go out of business if you're not careful. Your idea or your MVP or your products may not see the light of day if it's not managed properly. So depending on what stage you are, I think this is also sort of targeted a bit at, companies or founders that are operating companies that you've started to see some sort of revenue. I'm not talking about profits, I'm just talking about revenue. Hopefully you have found some level of product market fit. You have paying customers, and you have a level of operation. What's a health check? Really, it's a high-level review of your company's performance and status. And there was something I was going to talk about in the slides, but I took it out because on its own, it's really it's an hour-long discussion. And it's really about, the existential question of why you are in this business or why you're running this business. And I think in performing a health check, just given the background that we have shared, it's always important to think about, why are you here? What problem are you solving? What's the job that, your solution is solving for customers? It's existential because without that, then every other thing, is just going to be around for a matter of time before it collapses. If you're not solving an actual problem, you're not providing a solution to people, you're not solving the job that a customer wants to be solved, then it's only a matter of time before the whole pack of cards crumble. So back to what the health check is. Like I said, it's a high-level review of your company's performance, your status, where are you, what's your financial status, what's your status regarding your employees, your idea, your products, that sort of thing. It's kind of like a 360 review. So you're looking at the entire business. That's really ideally what it should be. So you're not only looking at your financial status or your technical status, you're looking at your operations, you're looking at your people, you're looking at your brand, you're looking at your reputation. It can be a very structured process, depending on what stage you are and what sort of resources you are that's available to you. So if you have like an entire maybe like team of folks that you can dedicate to this, or you're able to afford like an external advisor or consultant to help with this, then by all means. But if you're still like a very early stage startup where it's just you, the founder, or you, the co-founders, a few staff here and there, then it can be a light process. I think the key objective is to sort of ascertain your status and, come out of this with a plan for improvements. So I thought I was useful to sort of provide that. So it's a process that you're looking at to get a sense of where, where the company is and all of that. What's the importance? The importance of doing this is one, sometimes, when ignorance is bliss, for founders and businesses, ignorance is not bliss. You need to know. You need to know where you are. You need to know where you're bleeding. You need to know what the opportunities are, what the threat is. You need to know what your finances, you need to know how your people are doing. You need to know how your technology, your platform is doing, on a regular basis. So that's one of the advantages of carrying out a health check. It helps you sort of optimize your resources. So if you know what needs to be done, or a couple of things that need to be done, then you are able to optimize your resources in focusing on the ones that will deliver the highest returns, as opposed to trying to do everything. Third thing, which is also a follow-on to that, is that it helps you, make better decisions, because you've done a review. There's some sort of data-driven or insights that you have gotten from that exercise, that helps you make better decisions. You're not just waking up to say, oh, we're sacking 3 people because the economy is bad. Not because you have checked and you've seen that your runway will not survive your entire staff strength for the next 6 months. Do you see? So it helps you in terms of making like data-driven decisions. What's important? Again, just so that I'm also sort of being mindful of the sort of audience. You can't afford to carry out this exercise every month or quarterly, that sort of thing. But it's something that you should do maybe twice in a year. Or quarterly, actually, if you have like the resource or the team. There's also an easier way of doing this. Like if you identify 3 or 4 things that are important to you, or that's important to your current investors, or that's sort of important to your ability to continue, as a going concern, your ability to continue as an entity. And then you can focus on those key themes, draw out your sort of sub questions or sub areas for those themes, and then check on those themes every quarter. So this is definitely different from setting goals or key results or key objectives. No, this is you reviewing where you are. It's not sort of also reviewing, or hoping or, daydreaming. It is like a realistic position. What is our annual, what's our revenue as at today, year to date? What is our, what's it called? Cost of acquisition of customers, CAC, today? What's our runway? Knowing what our expenses are and what our projected expenses are as at today. That's what you're doing. So your things may change over time. At the beginning, you may not really be concerned about like your online or brand presence, but as you grow, that may be something that will become important to you. It may even be important to you from day one. For example, if you're like a financial, like a fintech, because 1 or 2 or 3 bad tweets around your customer service or data, loss, that sort of thing around you can spread like wildfire, and that may cause people to start withdrawing their monies from you or stop using your services, and that immediately causes you to start to lose revenue. Eventually, cash is king. So that's sort of like a spiral that you don't want to happen. So what you should do is at the beginning of this, identify the key things that are important to you. Identify like the sub areas that you want to focus on, and then you then use that to sort of carry out the health check. So this is supposed to be a guide. Again, there's not like one size fits all for this process. I would usually advise that the founders you should be involved in this process. Again, you might not be involved in the, I don't expect that you're the one sitting to calculate what your CAC is, depending on what, the size of your team. But I expect that you know what goes into your CAC. And I expect that you know what your CAC is at this point. I expect that what your run rate is. I expect that you have a dashboard or as simple as an Excel sheet that you update every day that shows, the key metrics that are important to you and to your business or to your investors, or the key metrics that sort of ensure that, as long as these are doing fine, and then it means that you're going somewhere. So what I've done is sort of put out like sample key themes, and that usually the ones people would sort of focus on if you're doing a health check. So what I would do is just quickly be mindful of time, go through the themes one after the other, and I'll just sort of explain what you're doing here. So for example, your financial well-being, this is very, 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 very important. So what are your key financial metrics? What's your revenue? What's your gross margin? With your financial well-being, what you're trying to figure out is that today, where are we financially? What's our operating margin? You may not be in a profit-making position. That's expected for a startup in your early years. But what you're trying to figure out is, even though we're in a loss-making position, what's improving, or what are the key metrics that we should be tracking? What are your top expenses and your revenue sources? If you're a product-led company and then your revenue is supposed to come from subscriptions or, product purchases by users, how is that? What's the trend? Is that like an increase? Is it increasing or is it decreasing, or is it just going zigzag? And you can't really figure out what's the drivers of the zigzag movements with your revenues or with your customer purchases. What are your top expenses? Again, if you notice what I've said, like I haven't asked you to sort of dig down into what are your expenses, what are your top expenses, because that way you're able to prioritize, like, what are things that you're spending money on? Are they stuff that you should be spending money on? Are you even spending enough? Because it's not just looking at it and saying, we're spending a lot on marketing. Whereas maybe you're not even spending as much as you should be spending on marketing, but it just looks a lot. So what's your primary source of funding? That's also very important, depending on what stage you are. What are your significant financial obligations, actual or contingent? So actual, maybe you have a line from a bank. Sorry, you have a facility that you've taken from a bank and you need to pay that, so you're paying down something on that every month. Or you have an investor that has a convertible note, and maybe it's a short-term convertible note, and you're required to either pay them out or convert them into equity in the next few months. That sort of thing. Those are like your financial obligations. And just being aware of what that is. Do we have enough revenue to meet these obligations? Would we be able to meet them? Where's the money coming from for us? Just even looking at, again, some companies track the gross margin, some operating margin, some look at different things. What's the revenue in the first place before you even start looking after like the other line items. So that's something that you do with your financial well-being. Again, with this, I would usually advise as a founder at the early stage, again, try to do this with, hopefully you have an accountant, or even if you don't have an accountant, but I imagine that there's someone, maybe your other co-founder, that's sort of responsible for your finances, and you're able to sort of pull those numbers out, identify what your key financial metrics are, and then know what it is. At this stage, what you're trying to figure out is where we are. Operational assessment. So what can be optimized? What are we doing, and what can we do differently, or how do we currently run our business? What are the dependencies? So for example, if you were a fintech, you may find out that you don't have a license, but then you're really dependent on a banking partner or another fintech partner that's dependent on another banking partner, and those are dependencies that, could really have, impact your business. But that's where you are as that today. What's broken or what is about to break? That's also from a technology perspective or a process perspective. So you may be, again, my apologies, I'm going to be using a lot of examples or analogies from fintech or financial services. So you may be a company that, maybe you process payments, and then you have lots of agents, or you use agents from another network, or you share agents within the network. And there's also the process of them receiving a lot of cash thing with them overnight, that sort of thing. That's a process. Well, that's where your process is, what can be automated, or what are we currently doing that's manual that can be automated. On the regulatory and compliance side of things, this is usually important for companies that are regulated, either regulated directly because they have a license, or they are working with companies that are licensed. So generally, regardless of whether you have a license or not, the regulations that are even applicable to you, so like tax regulations apply to you, company regulations apply to you, data regulations apply to you, consumer protection regulations apply to you, regardless of whether you are licensed by CBN, SEC, NCC or not. So those are general regulations that even apply to you. The way you would look at your regulatory or compliance position would be, so what would make your regulator shut you down today? Or what would make a partner shut you down today? That easily just tells you a sense of, whether you're fine or whether you're not fine. Why would a customer report you to regulatory authorities today? Like, are we doing anything that will make a customer report us to regulatory authority? And it also takes you being aware of your processes. It also takes you having the right people in the room, to contribute to this conversation. Because if you were doing this maybe at the top level alone with like your managers, and you're not involving maybe like your food surgeons, you may not have a proper sense of these things. So it's also, important to sort of figure out what's the best way to sort of get this information, and to be able to, look at the real situation on ground. What are you doing now that exposes you to fines? Again, what I've also found generally with regulated entities or even unregulated entities is there's a level of fine that startups are generally okay to deal with. So long as it's fine, it's not imprisonment. We're not going to prison. Nobody's being convicted. It's just fine, right? Founders are usually willing to take a level of risk, like, I'll take this level of risk because I think that the advantages or the benefits I'm going to get far outweighs what these fines might be, or what these penalties might be. But outside of that, it's important that you're very mindful of what you're doing that may cause you to be fined by a regulator or cause the regulator to sort of shut you down or take your license or whatever it is. So that's something to immediately look, to assess if you were looking at your regulatory compliance position. Are we filing? Sometimes there's a lot of founders also take it for granted, especially in the first 2 years, depending on how much you've raised or if you've had, dealings with external investors that demand that you file or that you're in a certain position. So that's something to look at. People evaluation, who are your key talent? For your business, what people that you need? If you're doing like a B2B products and then you need salespeople, business development people to be talking, to reach out, create a system for reaching out to other and you have maybe one person who still understands your user interface, or one person that very familiar with your architect, your platform, that person can't do anything else. That's a key man risk. So that's very easy. What key resource is missing on your team? You sort of already have an idea of what the functions are for you to grow a business. So you must have your, the founders, the operations person, your finance, marketing, depending on the type of business that you are, that you're running, there's some key functions that you should have as you start to grow. So what are the key resources? What's key resources missing on your team? Are you overstaffed? Or are you understaffed? Or do you think we're rightly staffed for the number of people that we have? So some companies have like a ratio that they use in determining how much of your expenses your payroll should should amount to. And then if you look at it, sometimes what I find is that some companies are not paying as much, like they're not incurring as much because they're trying to manage and try to cramp a lot of people with work. Or in some cases, you find that people have gone overboard. The payroll is very bloated and large for the sort of revenue that they're generating. So that's something to always look at. When you're doing your people evaluation, do you have people with the right set of skills at the right level? That's you looking at whether you're rightly staffed. So that may mean looking at the Excel sheet that has the list of everybody, or your people platform that has everybody's names and the qualifications and their roles, and you're looking at it, or your head of people, assuming that you're at that stage where you have a head of people, is looking at it and to say, we have 2 salespeople, that's fine. We have 2 that's fine. We have 1 person in legal, for now we don't need 1 more person. We have 1 finance person, and we have external support from finance from KPMG or something like that, But that's what you do. Again, it's a sample key things. Some other company will be doing this and may not have people, to be honest. It may be like the online presence or the reputation, or maybe during the sales check, they just want to really focus on their reputation and their finances. And it now means, how do people perceive us online? What's our brand strength? That sort of thing. You may even need to sort of engage external people to sort of assess what people are saying about your brand. So sometimes you see some posts on Twitter, on Instagram, where people are asking you about, which service should you use? They're sponsored by companies. They're sponsored by companies. They're just trying to get a sense of what people think about them and all of that. So that might be somebody just running their health check on what people think about their brand and their reputation, and just to get a sense of that. So I would go to the next slide. So, sorry. Oh wow, what's going on? Okay. When you're done with this, there's the first process will be in terms of like finding, just getting a sense of what the position is, where you are, and what your status is. Revenue is down by 20%. Our CAC is down. Our CAC has gone up by 25%, but we haven't seen an increase in number of users or active users. So active users have been reduced. That sort of thing. I will go back to this. So an example of a health check report, again, not necessarily be in this format, but it might just be, everybody sort of you inputting what you found based on documents you reviewed, evidence that has been provided to you, that kind of stuff. You may find that your CAC is way higher than your peers. Your cost to revenue ratio has been increasing rapidly. So you're spending much more than, your revenue. And that's something to be aware of, to be honest. Maybe the significant adverse media from customer call out. So people have called you out severally on Twitter. Like if I type your company's name on Twitter, I will just see different reports. In fact, people have so different threads, negative threads about you on Twitter. That's what you find. Your cash reserve cannot withstand stress events. So for example, God forbid that. God forbid that maybe dollar becomes 2,000 naira to $1, whatever it is now. And maybe you've been charging based on conversion of dollar to naira. Obviously, that means you now have to increase naira because you're paying an external supplier, a major supplier, a licensee or something in dollars. That's something that essentially just requires additional cash from you. And then you find like cash reserve cannot withstand that. That's a stress event. You find that maybe your ex-employees have been poaching your current employees and you just had a revolving door. People are believing your company and, haven't figured out why. And then just figure out that, okay, we've lost 3 people, maybe from a particular team. And then you investigate, they all these 3 people work in the same company. And then you have it. Maybe your bank partners are sent you 3 warnings on KYC deficiency. Maybe by the 5th warning, it means that they will just disconnect you. And that's the end of your business. Oh, well, that's a temporary stop to your business, but you get the drift. On the technical side of things, you've had like release deadlines and you've missed the release deadlines for the last 2 quarters. You were supposed to release something on the 1st of October. You didn't release it until 31st of October. You were supposed to release something on the 30th of December. You didn't finish until, February of the following year. So that's something to be mindful of. Yes, there will always be like, usually you'd have, but if there's a consistent or continuous habit of, delaying release, then it means that you need to look at that process to find a way of fixing it. You may find out that you need to hire an accountant because maybe you're using your co-founder's younger sister who doesn't really have experience running accounts, but she's a graduate of accounting and you think that she'd be good for the job. But you find out that, okay, actually, we've grown to a stage where we need to hire a full-time accountant. I was spending too much on food vouchers just because you find that, well, you spent a lot. By a lot, it means you've benchmarked it against a particular metric and found that you spent a lot on food vouchers. So these are kind of examples of things that you'll find from your reports, from your health check. It will just highlight, things that are either deficiencies, areas of improvement, what needs to, where you're not where you should be, that sort of thing. In some cases, you would also find, you should also find like, you're doing okay. Actually, I should have been clear that you'll find in some cases that you're doing better than, what you had set out to do. You may find that your CAC is actually way lower than your peers. And then the question may now be, well, if we increased more at marketing, would we get more users? You may find that you actually have like a lot of positive brand recognition online. And then that could be like, so maybe you were only, you were only selling your stuff through your app. Maybe you're only sending your business through, you're only available through your app. You may actually now, prompt you to think about web as well. So those are the kind of things that your health check will sort of throw up to you. So I'd say take note of these just generally. So, your financials, are you spending too much? Are you not tracking your expenses? Are you not tracking your financial metrics? Are you subsidizing your customers or partners? A lot of people find out eventually that, they're paying for stuff that their partners should be paying for, but they're paying for stuff that their customers should be paying for. And that's sort of, that's revenue leaking for them. You don't have a contingent funding plan. If no customer pays today, tomorrow, there's no way, like money's not coming from anywhere. You should always have like a contingent funding plan. Your processes, so maybe your key process or a key feature of your product or your service offering is dependent on one partner. If that partner shuts you down, you're dead. I don't know if some of you might remember, I think in 2020 or so, or 2021, I can't remember what year, NIBS sort of gave a directive on a Saturday evening or so, and that directive caused several companies that have been providing BVN verification service to shut down that service. And there were several fintechs that were dependent on other fintechs to verify their customers using that service. And that meant that, for like a week or two, people couldn't verify. That sort of thing that happens, when you're dependent on one partner. So that's something to look at with your processes. Ignoring quality assurance for product-led companies, you find that, there's some processes that are non-standardized or non-documented, or people just generally ignoring rules. So you find that, with your processes, those are things that that may come up. On the people side, you may be hiring specialists way too early. And that's an advice that I think a lot of founders get. Depending on where you are, for example, if you're in your health tech, you may need to hire a doctor or hire a medical professional. You may not be like medically learned yourself, and at the early stage you may actually need to hire a doctor. That's separate. But for some, the advice is just not to hire like specialists way too early. So you're hiring a senior finance person from Goldman Sachs, that sort of thing, when you really cannot afford it. You'll see that you have revolving doors. People are leaving, quite too often. Or there's a dilution of the culture. That's something to sort of pay attention to when you find that from your health reports. From your products, you may be burning cash excessively on marketing. I think one thing that people are also starting to realize, and I think that personally, I think they're like different views. So you'll find some people that say make the customer pay for your product from day one because they realize the value. They're probably your true customers. You find product market fit. You're solving their problems. You're doing the job that they want it done. That sort of thing. And there's some people that's of the view that subsidize at the beginning, give them some, and then gradually withdraw the fee. I think it also depends on the kind of business. So I don't really have like a clear answer to, or clear option in terms of whether you shouldn't subsidize. But I'll tell you, like, don't subsidize too much, such that you're burning so much cash and you're not seeing like corresponding increase in sort of like active users or whatever it is, or LTV of your users. You're finding constant bugs or platform failures are something to be very, very mindful of, because it means that your systems are unstable. And when people start that you're not stable, it means that you're not dependable, and it means that they would, they can't rely on you to provide the service. And eventually they would find alternatives. And that's how, just sustainability comes into question. Constant deviation from your product roadmap, that's something to be very, wary of. So I already went through this. Essentially, with that review, you identifying the key themes, the key areas that you want to focus on. You've identified, you've seen what is shown up. The next step will be in terms of you having like a plan of action. So again, this is something that if you can, you should do maybe on a monthly, maybe not monthly actually, on a quarterly basis or biannual basis. And then you have a plan of action. Nothing too difficult, but just something that indicates this are the, from this process, we've identified 4 or 5 big things that we want to try and correct between now and the next quarter. And this is what we're going to do about this. Should have a timeline for execution, not just something that's going to happen forever, because when we do the next health check, we want to be sure that we have rectified this issue. And, it's no longer a threat to our sustainability or our existence, or even if it is, the risk or its impact has been minimized, and we're doing something about it. So if we're solely dependent on one partner, in the next 3 months, we'll find another partner and sort of sign up with them, make them a redundant, service provider, or switch between both of them. That way, we're not dependent on one partner. And then have a review date. So your review date is probably like the next mini check that you're having. Just check through. These are things that you can identify and all of that. Again, with this, you will find some positives as well. You'll find areas that, okay, maybe if we are doing this well, maybe it means that we have some capacity to innovate or to extend these products into another, through another channel, that sort of thing. But that's what, this process ideally would reveal to you. But I would say that one of the key advantages of this is that it helps you see where your leakages are. It helps you see what your status is and what you should be doing about it. It also helps you sort of put what's really important at the top of mind. And for a lot of tech, for a lot of tech companies, cash is really important. Like, you have to be in the state where you're liquid. So knowing where you're spending money on, what the key metrics are for you, what your CAC is, what your runway is, what your burn rate is, having like a contingent funding plan is something that's important. It should be like I said, it should be like a dashboard that you as a co-founder, you're looking at daily, and then you're constantly thinking about, not to give yourself blood pressure, but it's something that you're constantly looking at, and just, being sure that we're not exceeding this sort of metrics, or if we are, we're meeting the targets, or we're at a good place with this particular metrics, and we know that, okay, if something happens, if an adverse event occurs, whatever it is, we're able to withstand this. Again, as with businesses, you will plan. I mean, you should plan. A lot of businesses fail in the first 5 years. But you put yourself in a better position to fight longer. Sometimes all you just is fight just another 1 month or 2 months, and then it's just that breakthrough, religious balance. But you will put yourself, you give yourself a better chance of fighting if you're constantly looking at the right things. You're not, yes, you should look at your competitors, you should compete, but you're constantly looking at things that matter, things that impact your bottom line, things that impact, your users, things that impact your license and your fines. Because again, times like this, if you get slanted fines, for example, someone reports you to the Data Protection Commission, or they report to the Consumer Protection, FCCPC right now, and an investigation is carried out, you're slammed a fine of 20 million. Someone else will just, you know what? It has been a good run. This is where we end the fight, and then they will just let it go. But you don't want to put yourself in that position. And the only way you can do that is to be proactive about the things that matter, the key things of, what sustainability means to you, and you're sort of drawing out a plan, identifying those key metrics and drawing out a plan to make sure that you're sort of on top of those metrics. I think that would be all. It's just be mindful of keeping to time. I think I might have exceeded time a bit, but yeah, happy to take questions.
Thank you. I think that was just a roller coaster of so many things. And you'll be shocked. 3 things I was doing, I was writing, I was taking snapshots. And then I remembered, but we're going to have the slide. Why am I taking snapshots and, just... Hello? Are you there?
I can hear you. I will share the slide, definitely.
This was it. True. I was taking pictures, especially the matrix. Okay. I got engrossed and I stopped. I say, hey, calm down. You're going to get the slides. Because for me, there's no other time that resilience and sustainability is critical for startups, for companies. I mean, we run a venture studio, got a couple of portfolio companies, and that's what we'll be doing the last 6 weeks thereabout. What businesses are we going to 2024 with? Which ones are nice to have and which ones are need to have? Which ones are there for the bragging right and which ones are there as real businesses? Okay. And those are difficult calls and decisions. Some things, they're glamorous, they look all nice. You're ticking the ESG check boxes, you're ticking all the climate change. The question is, are there many businesses or you're burning cash? And very difficult decisions to make as founders and all that, but we do have to make them. Again, the build up, 4 years of roller coaster, very few organizations surviving.
Yeah.
Very few. From COVID up to now, the world is not the same.
Unfortunately, I think even with next year, it doesn't really look like it's going to get better because you have a new government, you have new policies, they're also trying to, there's even just in terms of like the revenue drive for government on its own, you already know that, yes, things might be.
It will be. I know you're trying to sound very political and very comforting. Things are likely going to be interestingly more difficult. So again, from an inflation point of view, and then we expect that it tapers down in Q4. I mean, and all the financial indices are there, the bankers committee conversations. Next year is a year of reforms. So when you run a year of reforms generally creates uncertainty. Uncertainty increases cost of doing business anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world, every year that a country goes into an election year is uncertainty. Then when the election year gets followed by a year where you have a new government driving reforms, higher uncertainty. Every fund that everybody runs to shelter first, you want to to shelter. So again, we're not forecasting very exciting, robust years next year, and that's why this is important. And for the next 4 or 5 Techbiz is all about how do we survive next year? What should people be doing? And this is the first of all that series up until the whole of end of Q1. So in December, in January, February, March, we will be doing build up to what you've done. And I found it quite instructive because again, I loved your matrix. And I think for everyone who is on this call, and I think they can reach out to a couple of other people who I think need to see this. This is one of the best sessions I've had in terms of the real content that has been shared. It's relevant for this time. I love the matrix. You're looking at your people. Okay, I think I see a lot of that where especially for fintechs, you start paying very huge amounts and all that, and then suddenly it becomes difficult to start paying because $5,000 you promised a CTO, $5,000 was maybe less than 2 million, but $5,000 now sounds close to 5 million naira a month, and your cash flow is not looking like it. Or maybe actual for $5,000 is 6 million naira a month.
It is. It's more than 1,000. Yeah.
So again, you look at that and you're seeing, the rotating door, and they're your processes. I like that. And what I like is that matrix thing allows you to see where are the buckets of where my issues are and how can I be able to treat them. And again, I mean, while we're having the exchanges, colleagues, please drop your questions across all the WhatsApp groups, and let's see if there are questions to ask, and let's quickly be able to drop them in here so that we can respond to them. We always try to be very sensitive to make sure we end by 6 on the dot, being respectful of people. But again, it's good we get that make sure people get as much as they can from these sessions. So I like that, as I was saying about that. And again, because at times people get fixated about financials without knowing that there are a couple of verticals that make financials. It's your people, it's your processes. Where are you leaking? Where are the controls? Where is duplicity? You're duplicating quite a number of things. I think those will look at. And then in terms of our products, some people are overbuilding. You're trying to sell Bolly, and you're trying to position as you're selling a Rolls Royce.
Or you're trying to sell 7 variations of Bolly. Have we told we need 7 variations of Bolly? Just complicated, and at that level, you don't need 7 types of Bolly and fish Bolly and vegetable Bolly and groundnut Bolly and pepper. Just give us 2, and perfect that, because that might just be what we. I'm not saying that there aren't people that, but looking at where you are and looking at stuff that's really important, you might just sort of really need to drill down on 2 versions of Bolly for now.
Yeah. So I think again that these are extremely very, very important conversations that need to be had. I think to a large extent again that startups need to be very introspective about what works and what doesn't work, and they need to create a balance. I think a lot of startups are also
what has worked in.
Come again?
Sorry, I was saying that. And what has worked in foreign countries might not work here.
Yeah.
And what has worked in another startup in Nigeria might not work for you. And I'll give an example of this. And not to berate anyone or whatever it is. There's some startups here that when you join them, you get a fancy computer. I will not mention the name. You get a swag bag, you get different sorts of things. And then you have probably just raised only 50K in dollars. You're trying to sort of match that because all the startups that you've seen that you see abroad or whatever it is, this is what they do. Whereas you probably don't need that. A fraction of what you're spending on that might even go towards maybe offering these people, your people, a bit more in terms of cash, and they'd appreciate it much more than your 100% wool hoodie.
Fully agree with you, and I think that's where I think. As a people, we need to understand the culture of reducing our wastefulness and our ability to be like the Joneses and show off. I see a lot of that. I've been a founder for more than 15 years, and I keep telling people that being a founder is not a glamorous job. We're not celebrities.
It's not.
We aren't celebrities. I mean, we're supposed to be dressed in work clothes with grease on our jeans and all that. But this whole celebrity status of what founders and co-founders are, I think is also something that we need to really check from a cultural point of view. A lot of people are spending way more than what they should be using to build their products on gallivanting. They're showing up in every exhibition that you really and have nobody you're going to convert. You're not spending enough time building your business. I think there are many things, and that's why I liked your matrix. Your matrix was not fixated about financials. It's processes, people. There are many other things people do that doesn't allow them to get it done, and that's why it's important. But I think somebody has dropped a question that I think I also find quite interesting. And this person says, how should a startup balance short-term financial goals with long-term while making decisions based on health checks? How do you create that balance? And every one of us, whether at the growth stage or an infancy stage, everybody's trying to make this. What do you recommend in a time like this?
I would say that sometimes your short-term financial goals are probably more important than your long-term financial goals. Like, let me do all I can do all I can to stay alive for the next 1 month or two or the next 6 months, as opposed to whatever it is. At the startup, yes, you should plan long term. But at that stage, it is more important that you're iterating on your plan. You're checking in on your plan too. Your short-term goals are probably more important, because they are the drivers of the decisions that you take on a day-to-day basis. And things are changing. So I'm not saying that, obviously you should have long-term financial goals, but to the extent that you are in a position where you are very dependent on customers and revenues, looking to raise funds, all of that, I would say be flexible, on your long-term goals. The short-term goals are really the ones that, this is what, if you're, what's it called? If you're looking at, you're looking at stuff, a key metric or whatever that you'll be looking at to be like, what's your run rate? How much cash do I have to maintain my operations for the next, 4 months, 6 months? What can I do to sustain that cash and extend it to another 8 months before this funding meter, whatever it is, goes to, or before I'm able to even prove to potential investors that I'm worthy of their investment? So that would be my, that'd be my thoughts for this question.
Okay. Yeah. So again, this is quite interesting. I do hope that whoever asked that question finds it quite instructive, because to a large extent, I think that let's survive the battle so you can win the war.
Yeah, exactly.
Stated on that war, so that, because if you lose the battle, there's no war to be fought. If, like you said, you get slammed a fine and you don't even have the cash to do it, and again, many people will go through that. Beautiful product, but it just never got to get into the hand of the customer and all that. Yes. You spend all your time bringing the best technology people from India and China to build something that you never have money to launch. Okay, and you finish paying and all that, but the product just never gets to the customer. Who's going to pay for all that? Bearing in mind that all your infrastructure, all the APIs, all the costs, all the plugins are now in dollars, forecasted to land at $1,500 from 360 or 500. So you're paying 3 times more than you were paying for your AWS or Azure or plugins, or you will do that. So again, it's for people to really check that. Make sure that you survive the war so that you can have a battle. And someone quickly asks one here. How should a startup retain key talent during challenging periods, and what workforce availability measures should be in place to ensure quality during financial storms? Interesting. I love that.
Yeah, it's very okay. So how do you retain key talent? I think that it's usually very difficult, to be honest, because in this side of the world, a lot of people, still work because they need to make ends meet. Not because this is work that is interesting.
Not passion.
Is not interesting. Maybe not passion, or maybe some calling, like you'd have in like developed countries where the basic needs are met. So a lot of people here work because they need to make the ends meet. They have people dependent on them. So it's important that that paycheck comes in. And during challenging periods, I think what's very important is that as much as you can, you're transparent, especially with people that are key talents. You're transparent with them and you're upfront. You don't want people second guessing whether their money will come today or it will come tomorrow. If you pay on the 25th, pay on the 25th. If you know you're not going to be able to pay on the 25th, have a conversation ahead. In fact, if there's already a problem and you know that you have to pay on the 25th, and these people are your key talents, have a conversation about it. This is what it is. Offers different solutions. Can we reduce your salary right now? Doesn't mean I'm reducing your salary. I'm only deferring 20% of it. So when we get into a proper position, I will pay that 20%. In fact, with something on top of it, once we launch this, once we get this to this phase. How that becomes effective is your transparency and willingness to have that conversation before they come to you or before they start to second guess you. That's one option. One option that I've also seen is also also in terms of offering people offering them like skin in the game. A lot of companies offer share options. A lot of companies do not. But it might also be something that's important to the key talent that you're talking to. So for some people, they might be, I'd like to own a part in this business. and work out something. Obviously, you should talk to a lawyer or talk to what's it called, an advisor, so that you can set up an employee's option properly. And then document, and then being sure that you'll be ready to commit to that. So offer them something, in return for that. I think something else that I would sort of, that I've seen happen, in real life was when, someone that I know, they were going through like a difficult time. They were probably going to shut down in a couple of months. And what it was called two of their senior people, and, was very transparent. This is going to happen. However, we still can pay salaries for 3 to 4 months. What I need you guys to do is sort of come up with like an entire new business or an entire revenue line and see how that works. And in less than, the 3 or 4 months, these two guys that he would have let go because he wouldn't have been able to afford them after like 4 months, came up with something totally different that I think they've sort of pivoted to that now. But it was born out of you having a conversation with your key talents and, sort of giving them that sort of ownership. This is what, feel free to use the staff, feel free to use the resources or whatever it is, checking in with it. But this is another, sort of build a lifeline for yourself. Of course, that will happen. Some people will not take it. Some people will rather just resign and go. But some of your, folks will take that opportunity to express, their own talents and their own ability and build something, even with the safety of getting salaries. So there are different options that you can offer to people where you probably are not able to pay them what you should be able to pay them, or it may be difficult to, sort of pay their salaries and that sort of thing. So that's, those like 3 would be my advice. Workforce adaptability measures. I think with this one, I think it's a, remote working. What I'm starting to see a lot more is people, being willing to have like folks move from full-time employment to part-time employment. That was not really something that was common in Nigeria, but I'm starting to see it now where, people sort of move from full-time employment to part-time employment. You're working certain hours or certain days with the company. You're delivering on certain projects. You're not a full-time employee. You're not entitled to full-time employee benefits, which sort of reduces your own cost, but you're able to use that resource. So that might be something for you to, to explore, depending on what or how important this person is to you.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Again, thank you so much. I know there will be many more questions. Should we go on? And I can keep engaging, but one last question. I've got 1 minute and I'm going to shut it down. One last question. If you were a prophet, can you forecast for us what sectors will likely be resilient or what sectors will likely grow next year if you were a prophet?
Wow. I think education is going to grow.
Come again?
EdTech. I think education, EdTech is going to grow.
EdTech, yeah.
I don't know that next year is going to be the year that is going to really, really grow, but I think it's going to grow next year. I think we're actually still going to, there's still a lot of room for fintech to grow in Nigeria. We think that we've seen a lot, we haven't seen. I don't think we have. I think it's next year is also a year for, for fintech as well. Let me see. And maybe this is more wishful thinking on my part, it will be renewable energy.
Okay.
Especially like tech, obviously. So I'm not going to mention like, AI is going to pervade a lot of our lives, a lot of our solutions, businesses, processes, and all of that. So I'm not really going to talk about how AI is going to do that and all of that. But I think like things around energy and power is something that's going to, get a bit more prominent in, when you start to hear about companies raising funds, expansion, acquisitions. I think we will start to see a bit more of that in the renewable energy space. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry if I
did like to also be a winner as well.
What's that?
Of free logistics.
Logitech. Okay. So Logitech, fintech, edutech, and renewables are 4 places the prophet in the house today is placing our bet. So if I were you, those are the codes. Spin the button, put your bet on it. Edutech, Logitech, fintech, and renewable energy. Thank you so much. I mean,
thank you.
Much more to Tolulope. It's nice having you. We could have kept on this for another 30-45 minutes. I'm sure you know that, because there's a lot to unbundle. There's a lot to be aware of. But again, we cannot thank you enough. And I'm sure
Thank
people need
you very much for having me. It was really
yeah,
great. Thank
click
you
on
very
the
much for
bites
having
and all
me.
that. And again, for all our listeners who were across different platforms, you will have this recording by 12 noon tomorrow on our website, www.forward/webinar, Eco Innovation Center /webinar. It's there. My colleagues have dropped the link. I can also join our forum where we'll drop some of these presentations. We will drop some of these recordings. You can interact with them, because I think what she shared in 35 minutes is extremely packed. And I think we all need it as a guide. We all need it as a guide. And I see my colleagues already reminding me, Art of Technology Lagos 5.0 is here. Again, it's the curation of Eco Innovation Center in partnership with the lead sponsor of Lagos State Government. And our job as ecosystem builders is bringing together ecosystem players and policymakers to have a conversation. This is born out of the fact that we know that legislation always lags innovation. The best way to make sure innovation and legislation are, at tandem, so that things can happen, is to make sure there's a space for us to come together. AOT does that. We bring out public sector players. We bring 2 ministers are coming this time around. Lagos State that holds 70%. Yeah, so Minister of Digital Economy, the Minister of Creative Economy, they will both be there. And that's one. Bosutijani, we will have the governor, deputy governor, the commissioner for Lagos State, who is also big on the innovation ecosystem. Tubosun Alake will be speaking. House of Assembly members will be here. We have somebody from Ekiti, the Commissioner for Science and Technology from Ekiti State will also be in here. We've got people who run one of the biggest streaming platforms of the US are all going to be there. So quite a number of guys that you've known, Kule Afolayan, Obi Ashika, Asuko Kobams, quite a number of them will be in the house. And in 2 power-packed days, they will be unbundling different issues as we dimension the verticals that we're focused on this year, which is how technology can help us unlock that vast amount of potential in the creative economy. I know we are not talking about NFTs and metaverse anymore, but in our own space, guys, how can our creative economy be powered up by the technology guys? Because I think that space needs some disruption. And if you see what Spotify has done, and streaming platforms, taking all of us away from Idumot and Ebikpejo Lane and Alaba Market, and now we're talking about streams and downloads. We can do a lot more across the whole value chain. That's what we're discussing this time around. Registration is you need to register, but attendance is free. You register, but attendance is free, and we do look forward to hosting you. And again, of course, I'm personally inviting you to the Tech Ecosystem Awards, where again, we look at people who are powering and doing a lot of stuff in the ecosystem, and let us recognize them for the things they're doing. I would like to personally extend that invitation, and of course, to round you up by thanking you for keeping the date with us again this Thursday. We will have one on the last Thursday of the year. Then we're wining and dining, and we should see how we can be able to virtually have a party together as we end this year that came from cash crunch to election to blue to all manners of things. This year has had it all. And of course, we're now in the investment winter. Not a problem. We are survivors. We will survive and see better days ahead. So again, thank you for keeping the day with us. I remain your host of Techbiz, founder of Eco Innovation Center, Victor Benga-Folabi, saying thank you very much to our discussants and our guests for this evening, and everybody that logged on across platforms. I want to say thank you very much. You don't take your presence for granted, and we look forward to having you some other time. Thank you, and do have a rest.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Thanks for having me. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.